Hello and welcome to the RevOps show. How and when do you need to hire a salesperson? As a salesperson, what kinds of qualities do you need to possess to land the job and do well? It's a tell-all episode with Doug and Jess as they roll through questions about hiring a salesperson. So whether you're in the field looking for a job or the one doing the hiring, you can have some knowledge on how to go about hiring or being hired. So they'll get into all the details. Let's get started.
Jess.
Doug. It has ended the day Friday.
Doug.
Doug. That's all that I have the energy for right now.
Like Jess.
Doug!
I look forward to this all week.
I know this is the highlight of your week.
This is the only time you let me talk to you.
This is the only reason that you get through the week is you know that we're going to have RevOps show at the end.
This is the only time you let me talk to you.
Yeah, that's so true.
So, not bad for June, right? It is June. It's June now, right? I mean, June?
No. We are not. No.
We're halfway through 20. We're almost halfway through 23, aren't we?
Feels like it. It's been a hell of a year.
In the last 48 hours, the adjectives used to describe what we implement are fancy spreadsheet. And this is, by the way, all positives. Also, it'd be like they would, instead of using a spreadsheet, they'd use a fancy spreadsheet.
Are these prospects?
These are good prospects, actually. These are what the good ones say. A skin for their ERP. Oh, so it's like a skin for our ERP. And trivial.
Trivial.
Yeah. I feel good about what we do. I'm glad to know that what we do is so appreciated.
I mean, fancy spreadsheet's not inaccurate. If you think about it.
Well, in defense, so it was a CFO who used the word trivial and was referring to CRM. And what I actually said to him was, I said, as I've said on this show, if we're looking at the requirements of CRM through the lens of technology, that's been met. We've met those requirements since 2003.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get that. That's like I said I wouldn't use the word trivial to describe it. I said, but if I was in a different line of business, I might use it. I might say trivial.
Yeah.
I said, but it's the adoption, and then so anyways, that's so when you said earlier today that you were spent, that's what I was referring to when I said, oh my God, you don't even want to know.
Oh,
You don't even want to know.
No, well, you told me, even though I didn't even want to know.
Yep. It's been a never ending afternoon. Holy cow! It's been the meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting.
Why are you doing that to yourself on Fridays? You need to.
I don't know. Be popular, they said.
Yeah.
You should strive to be indispensable, they said.
Yeah.
Overrated.
Yep, I agree.
Overrated.
And there's our show.
Overrated. You know what? I think people undervalue anonymity.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, so you're going back to Dallas. I understand we got a hard stop today because you're going to Dallas.
We do. I am. We do. I'm going to go to the Colts.
You're going to see you're going to go visit our biggest fans?
I am.
The
our number one fan.
Biggest fan?
My mom.
She doesn't listen to the show anymore, though, does she?
Probably not.
Why not? It's important that she listen to the show.
That's why I'm going to make sure that I let her know.
She has to listen to the show. That we should have her on, and we'll just introduce her as Jess's mom.
Oh,
Jess's mom, what do you think about RevOps?
That'll be a ball of fun.
I think it would.
Totally think we should do that.
I think we should.
Okay,
Marty,
what are we talking
about
today,
Jess? What do we got today?
I want to talk about how to hire for a sales role. I want to talk about about hiring salespeople and how you do that effectively. So
effectively? You didn't say that when you gave me the notes to prepare. You did not. It said how to hire for a sales role. You did not say effectively.
I did not.
You can't.
I
Throw
can't
these
spring that on
surprises
you.
You can't throw these surprises at me at the last minute. That's
I
unfair.
know you're not good on your toes. You're not good.
You know,
So
but I just want everyone to know that Jess yesterday in a meeting said that I was smart.
I didn't say you were smart. I said something that you said was smart. And that's not the same thing.
See what I deal with everyone, and you want. Arnie, what are we? So hire.
So where I want to start is how do you know that you need to hire a salesperson? Like how do you know that it's the right time?
I find that if you go deep in the desert, you fast, kind of let the smokes and winds kind of take over as you get into your various visions.
Just so you know, I knew this was a loaded question when I put it on the list.
So
I knew the initial response I got to this one was going to be a smart ass one.
well, maybe the one that sounds like it makes sense is actually the smart ass one, and that's actually the best way. I mean, add a little, maybe peyote, maybe some mushrooms or something. I'm not saying that I'm not condoning that, but I'm not saying it, or maybe that's how most people do it. So you got to give me a little bit more. So like, what type of company? What's the situation? Existing sales team or no existing sales team?
Existing sales team. Let's
How
say
big
you've got
is
a
the sales team.
100 people. 100 reps.
100 people?
Yeah.
How do you know when you need to hire a salesperson? When one of your salespeople quits and you need someone and you need coverage. That's a really interesting question, and we have not talked about that a lot. So unit economics.
Unit economics?
Yep.
What does that mean?
Well, just, I have a philosophy. I believe firmly that the juice needs to be worth the squeeze.
Never heard that from you.
You probably didn't know that. Wow, I got it. Like, I'm so big on that. Can we make me smaller? Sorry, I'm having issues today, everybody. So, it's an interesting. Let me add. So 100 salespeople. I'm going to say good economy or bad economy, and realize when I say good economy or bad economy, that's really situational, because there are. I mean, we can be overall in a really good economy, and for segments, for some segments, it's bad economy for them. So
let's go bad economy.
Like peacetime or wartime.
Let's go wartime. Let's go bad economy.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So when headcount matters.
Yeah.
So like in good times, I believe that salespeople are often hired unnecessarily, but that's not necessarily the wrong thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because if I've got a wind at my back and maybe I'm, hiring ahead of what I really need or something like that, especially when you're looking at, at the tune of 100 salespeople, that's not bad. And that's why, it's really interesting. I know you didn't ask this question, but the commentary from people on, with all the layoffs happening, especially in, the fast growth high tech world, there are some people who are saying, this was just shitty leadership. They did stupid things, etc. It's not always stupid to overhire.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you're in a land grab situation, if you see the market, growing faster than you are, then overhiring is not a bad thing. It's not the wrong thing. And the unfortunate element is that, like, when you're scaling up, you're going to overhire.
Yeah, sure.
But in difficult times, so and actually that actually gets to the question of when should you hire a salesperson more than when do you need to hire a salesperson. So unit economics is what does that mean? It kind of going back to what I said earlier. The vast majority of sales organizations I look at are underutilized. And I think that one of the reasons that people hire an additional salesperson is because it's easier to hire another salesperson than it is to improve utilization. The problem with that is that inevitably creates greater constraints. It creates bloated cost structures, and it also kind of puts a set point at a lower level of productivity. And so, if you take a look at the research that's out there, and I believe for the most part it's true, typical salesperson today spends 30 to 32% of their time actually selling. Why? Increased time spent on admin functions.
Yep.
Right. And so as that, that's been enabled by hiring another salesperson, which kind of builds that into the structure, like prematurely hiring another salesperson, because figuring out how to manage capacity, how to do those things better, that's where a lot of hard work comes in. And that's where there's a lot of math. And that's why it goes back to unit metrics. I actually saw, I think it was Sam Jacobs, the head of Pavilion, was posted on LinkedIn today. Referenced he was talking to some VC and referred to growth is earned. It's not given or something,
Yep.
And it growth is earned through good unit economics. That's why unit economics was on the top of my head today. If I hadn't read that, I probably would have said the economic model.
Right.
So what is your economic model? So what's your growth plan?
Mm-hmm.
Right. What's your what's your conversion model? What's your demand generation model looking like? What's the theoretical model, i.e. what are your targets? And people could think of that as just the conversion funnel. How are you doing relative to the model?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so sometimes I'm going to see that relative to a model, I'm underperforming. So my conversion rates are lower.
Right.
Certainly at a stage, which when my conversion rate is lower, especially at a certain stage when sales gets involved, that's going to put a pressure on capacity. And so, I might have to hire a salesperson, but hiring a salesperson masks a weakness. And so, one of the things that has happened, I think, in the last 10, 20 years that has brought a structural weakness and why revenue operations has the opportunity that it has to have the impact that it should have,
Mm-hmm.
is between the growth of technology, which was supposed to enable you to grow at lower costs, yet your cost of acquisition continues to go up and your cost of technology continues to go up. Between that and easy money, it has been easier to generate more volume than to generate more yield.
Gotcha.
Right. And so if I'm hiring because of a conversion issue, because of a model issue,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hiring because I need to hire, then okay. Right. But now I hire that person and I hit my number. So, okay. Hey, wow. Look, congratulations. But you just masked that there's a weakness there.
Yeah.
And then, oh, by the way, did you change your overall model? Right. So those things are all happening. And so this gets to a long-winded way of when so you don't hire more salespeople when you need more sales. You hire salespeople when you need more capacity and capability to manage the opportunities, to manage the demand levels that you have. And so every time you hire a salesperson, you are adding cost, attention, and resources below the wing. Oh, Jess, this is exciting because we are now Lyft. I can talk about this on a regular basis, right? Right. So if we want to generate lift, if we want to make growth, if we want to get on a growth path, then we need to be generating above the wing. So salespeople, especially, are post-intent costs, if you will. Now, I might apply them pre-intent, and we'll get into that maybe later. But what happens is as it increases, partially because it's a variable cost, as it increases your cost, it puts more pressure on what needs to come out, right? And so it puts more short-term pressure on what you need. So you now have to generate more. And if so as I'm hiring more salespeople, I'm putting more pressure on what's needed for post-intent opportunities. But if I'm not if I'm not farming the ground, if I'm not making the the environment a richer environment, a more target richer environment, if I'm not increasing the crop, if you will, right? So you would like, so when you hire salespeople and your economics don't support it, it's the equivalent of over farming. It's the equivalent of running your machines at 100 to 110% capacity all the time. And I will tell you, if you come in and you cut 50% of your staff, if you run your machinery at 100 to 110% capacity, in the short term, you will look like a genius, right?
Yep.
And if you look at what a lot of turnaround, the quote unquote turnaround specialists, my favorite of this was Al Dunlop, if you're old enough to remember him. I mean, that was his game plan. He basically came in, he was never at a company longer than 2 years because he'd come into a situation to a company in trouble. He would basically overcut. He'd run production above production capacity. Numbers would turn around, and the next company in trouble would hire him right? Until he ended up, I think it was at Sunbeam where, the shit finally hit the fan. Basically, it was the garage sale theory. You know what garage sales are based on?
No.
Garage sales are based on a behavioral concept called the greater fool theory, right? It's the fact that, so do you ever put something in a garage sale that's yours that you think is really valuable?
Oh, no.
Right. You put your trash. What you're basically counting on is the shit you want to get rid of. Someone else would be willing to pay for it.
One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Right? Which is another way of describing the greater fool theory. That there's someone more foolish than me. Right. And so that's what happens in sales so much. And that's why we have, so much good times, bad times. And so what happens is pressure gets put on every facet of your structure because the demand is coming from below. Like the resource pull is coming from below. And then you put yourself into a situation where, it's what I'm gonna call the greater wimpy theory. You know who wimpy is, don't you?
I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Right. That's what you're doing. So you're now in a position where you have to hire another salesperson to put them under a quota that they have to overproduce right. And you do that thinking, hey, I'm going to get out, we do that. We're going to get out of the trap that we're in, because if we can just get to this level of sales, then the model works, except that you're not addressing the flaw in the model. And so, like, if you have to hire that salesperson because of that flaw in the model, then obviously you hire that salesperson, but you've got to really focus. And by the way, I think going into the future with how people behave today, you really have to make sure that you're addressing, while you're hiring those people, what are you doing to address those structural elements? Because here's another way to look at it, by the way. If I can generate more demand than my sales team can manage, on the edge, what happens when I give the next sales opportunity to my salesperson who's already, at quota, and this becomes a piece on top of it? Well, what happens is it's a lower cost to you because you're already covering their core costs. So you're only covering your increment. And now that salesperson is super happy, right? Because they just got another opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't have to go, right. Whereas what happens all too often when you don't have the right unit economics, when you don't have the economic model that supports it, you hire another salesperson. Well, what do you have to do when you hire that other salesperson? Well, you have to reallocate territories.
Yeah.
Right. Or in some fashion, you put another person in there. Hey, we don't have territories. Get what you can. Well, now you've got salespeople so you just hired another competitor, right? And again, I'm not saying you never do that.
Right.
But you see what's happening is you're putting more and more strain on your system. And so I think that if you have a strong economic model, as you get larger, and I would say by the time you're at about, 20, 25 salespeople, certainly by the time you're at 50 salespeople, your model should be making it really clear when you need to hire a salesperson. Now, there is a challenge because you have companies that are funded and they have to meet certain targets to be able to get their next tranche of funding.
Yeah.
You have public companies that have to hit certain numbers by the end of various quarters.
Right.
And so one of the ways you do that is, bring in more end process resource to pull, but now you got to work that much, right? And you get into that whole vicious loop. And oh, by the way, what you see is net acquisition costs continue to rise.
Yep.
So there are times where you have to, and by the way, if your model is set up correctly and you've got the right signals in place, I would still say, like, you should never be surprised when you need to hire a salesperson. And you should never be caught unprepared when you need another salesperson. And this is true at virtually any size sales organization, right? And what that means is you need to always be recruiting.
Right.
Right. We see this a little bit less when you get into larger sales organizations. And because of all, 100-person sales organization should have some level of natural turnover for a bunch of different reasons. So there's a little bit of that there, but I see this constantly, acutely, companies that have 5 to 30 salespeople. They've got, all the sales seats are filled, right? And so they're not doing anything to find or get new salespeople. And there's underperformance, this, that, or they want to, resistance to change, all those different things. And they're like, okay, well, we can't do that because I can't risk upsetting my sales team, right? I can't lose the salesperson, right?
Right.
And the reason you can't lose the salesperson is because you don't have any bench.
Yeah.
You're not, right. You'd have to start from scratch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, so you should both be always ready to hire a salesperson. But you need to have, your economic model and your economics should really dictate when you hire a salesperson. It should be very clear signals.
Okay. What do you need to do to make sure that let's say you've decided to hire a salesperson. What do you need to do to make sure that salesperson is set up for success? Like internally or ahead of them coming on? Like what kind of pieces do you need in place for them to be successful?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is define success.
Okay.
And then, one element of success is what are the results that we're expecting?
Mm-hmm.
And then have the math to support it.
Okay. So that goes back to economic model.
Well, economic model and also reality. So, we want you to bring in 20 sales a year. That's all? 20 sales a year? Just a little bit more than 1.5 a month. Right?
Yeah.
Well, what does it take to generate 20 sales?
Yeah.
Right. So, well, we need 200 engaged customers. I'm sorry, 200 engaged prospects. I don't know.
Yeah.
200 MQLs, 200 SQLs. What I would probably call 200 EQLs, engagement qualified leads.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got 50. Okay, well, guess what?
Yep. We're not getting to 20.
Support it, right? So am I setting you up for success?
No.
Right. So, sales is a process. It's a dynamic process. It's a highly flexible process, but it's still a process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It has inputs, it has outputs, and it has results.
Yeah.
What are the key inputs? What is a good at bad? So by the way, it might be success is generating a higher volume of engagement qualified leads, engagement qualified accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That might be what it is. You need to understand what a real ramp, right? Now, again, let's say that we need 200 engagement qualified leads, generates 20 sales. I'm not thinking through the math if this all super makes sense. I've got 100 salespeople, and right now we're averaging 220 engagement qualified leads per rep.
Yep.
What does that tell you? It tells you better have some salespeople that you're hiring.
Right.
Right. And now you're able to reposition, reallocate, and everyone's got their coverage. What's my ramp for that rep going to be? It's going to be a hell of a lot fast. Like I'm going to be able to, like you're coming in, we've got him in place. We need you to pick it up. We need you to take it forward. Right.
Right.
You need to understand what is your sales cycle time. And what you need to understand, this is what drives me crazy. If you want to hire salespeople successfully, and by the way, I think hiring salespeople is the hardest.
Yeah.
Well, that's unfair. It's not the hardest. It is the highest mishire rate.
Okay. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
Mishires are a part of hiring salespeople. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Here's what I hate. People use averages.
Yeah.
So our average sales cycle time is 90 days.
Okay.
And most people are going to go, Mike, I'm shocked how many people tell me that their sales cycle time is less than 90 days. And I tell them, I've got news for you. What your selling cycle is less than 90 days. But there's a whole cycle that occurred before they ever showed up, or maybe before they ever showed up in your CRM or in your pipeline.
So when you say sales cycle versus selling cycle, so sales cycle would be from zero moment.
Sales cycle is really more buying cycle.
Okay.
How long does it take a customer to buy?
Yep.
Right. And so when we say sales cycle, right? So if I show up to you and you're already looking for something, and so you buy tomorrow, I could say my sales cycle is 1 day, but that's not real, right? My selling cycle is 1 day. Now here's the thing about averages, right? At its simplest, what you have to remember is if your average is at even a meaningful average, what it means is that 50% of situations take less time than that, and 50% take more time than that. So let's just say theoretically that it's 90 days, and your sales process is a bell-shaped curve, which I've yet to see any rep have a bell-shaped curve on sales cycle time. Right. And so we say sales cycle is 90 days. And so ramp time is 90 days.
Right.
No, that's not what it means. It means you're at 50% in 90 days.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the other 50% take longer.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that's even crazier. What you'll typically see is a dumbbell or barbell curve. And actually, if you could have a middle weight in there. So you have a percentage of sales that happen super fast.
Right.
You have a percentage of sales that take a really long time. So I've got, 2 sales happen in 2 days, 10 sales happen in 180 days. So the other thing that you got to keep in mind is not just what's your cycle time when you look at from a sales standpoint, what's your cycle time on a dollar weighted basis? Because one of the things that you'll typically find is that your lower revenue opportunities will tend to have shorter times than your higher revenue opportunities. Right. So even if all those deals come in, it's like understanding ramp, if you're going to, really manage this and set them up to be successful. And then this goes also into what I was talking about earlier, which is, do you have, I wouldn't tell a farmer that I expect X many bushel of corn, but only half of with only half a field.
Right.
To pull from, right? So it's understanding those things. And then I would say, are you good salespeople implement good process well? And so too often we bring in salespeople in essence and we say, figure it out, go make sales happen.
Isn't that what they do? That's what salespeople do, right? They just they make sales happen. By sales magic.
I have a choice to either engage in that, which, is one play. The other is to share what I think is a really important piece. So I don't want to take the sarcasm to miss what I think is a super important piece. Salespeople get far too much credit when the results are good. They get far too much credit, and they get far too much blame when they're not.
Yeah.
The other element too is if you take a look at where we have our largest sales resource, where we put our most important sales measures are actually where salespeople have the least value.
Which is at the end.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So what are some of the attributes that you look for in a salesperson? Like what are some attributes that you want to see when you're interviewing?
I want to see the killer instinct, Jess.
I knew that's what you were going to say.
That's a really hard question.
Why?
'Cause who's the greatest football player of all time?
Well, that depends on who you're
Who's the
talking
greatest
to.
football player of all time, Jess?
Tom Brady? Is that who we're going with?
I don't know. Is that who you want to go? You're thinking Roger Staubach.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
What if you're looking for a left tackle? So the idea that a salesperson is, these are the attributes of a salesperson. I don't know. I've met a lot of salespeople. I've met a lot of top performing salespeople that don't meet the attributes of a salesperson.
So what do you look for when you're, what do you look for though when you're, because you've interviewed a lot of salespeople. What do you look for when you're interviewing them? Like
Well, it's very situational.
Mm-hmm.
What are they selling? What's the condition of what they're selling? Are we selling for a large company that's in a leadership position? Everybody in the market knows who they are. Are we selling for a small company? I mean, you remember the company you were at. They hired a rep who was very successful from a very large brand name company, in a sales organization of hundreds to maybe even more than 1,000 with sales assistants and this and that. And I think at the time there were 3 total salespeople in the company. And it was like, hey, guess what? You make your own coffee. You send your own emails. You schedule your own meetings.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, what's the difference between, if I call you and say, hi, this is Doug with IBM, and I say, hi, this is Doug with
Lyft,
Plethora.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So like you have that. Are we in a high volume, high velocity, lots of transaction game? Like, so are we selling a $30,000 SaaS product of a marketing product to marketers? Are we selling are we selling a financial planning tool to CFOs? Are we selling $150,000 consulting advisory? I mean, you remember we hired somebody very capable, very successful before he was here, very successful after he left, very frustrated here.
Yeah.
And his biggest frustration, I don't know if he's still listening to the show or what he'll think, but this is my sense. I think he would agree. Biggest frustration, I think the thing he never could overcome was the rhythm.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, a good month was a day where he came from.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, what's the complexity? Who are you selling to? One of the best salespeople I've met was a guy who came from procurement. And by the way, when you met him, you were not surprised that he came from procurement. You would be very surprised to learn he was a sales executive.
Yeah.
You know who he sold to? Procurement.
Right.
He was a great sales rep. He knew procurement better than he understood it. So again, you get into all those things. Now, here's what I would look for. How well do you play poker? Honest to goodness, the greatest sales interview that would happen is have a Texas Hold'em tournament.
Yeah, we've talked about this before.
How do you deal with discomfort? One of the things that I do when we're helping somebody hire is I tell the company that we're helping out to tell them to reach out to me. Don't include me in the communication. And then I have to warn them because they get upset. I warned them. I said, I'm not going to respond to their outreach. And I won't respond until you hear from them.
Yeah.
Right. Why do I do that? And I told some people, they're like, that's a horrible experience. And here's why I do that. Right. Now keep in mind, this is not something we do in the first stages. This is an end stage.
Right.
So I want to know, how do you deal with discomfort? How do you deal with things when you're angry? How do you deal with things when you're not treated the way you should be treated?
Yeah.
Right. Do you hold it together? Right. So they're like, so what do you do in those situations? Now, I don't do that in a high velocity. I'm managing multiple sales because it's a different, it is a different experience. So, I want to see, how do they deal with disagreement? I want to see, will they disagree with you? So, the most dangerous thing about hiring salespeople is you use interviews to hire them. Well, if you're a sales rep and you're not a good interviewer, we don't really have to worry about it. Right.
Right.
Right. Every salesperson is pretty decent at the interview.
Yeah.
Right. My favorite trick when I interview for anything now is I start off the interview saying, "So tell me, what questions do you have?"
Yeah, we gotta stop. We gotta stop saying that on here because people have keyed on that. People are much less thrown off by that than they were before we did the podcast.
Well, you know what the upside is? That's okay.
Yeah,
Because think about this. Even though they're less thrown off by it, how often do they not have any questions?
not that often.
And by the way, it used to super throw them off.
Yeah,
It still throws them off because how do interviews work? Interviews work where I start asking you questions.
right.
You get into a flow. Because by the way, when you're in sales, you're going to be leading off with questions. So I want to know,
Right.
how do you tee it off? Like, do you come in? Are you?
How do you start the conversation?
So tell me about the role. Okay, that's not a good first question, especially if I'm hiring a salesperson,
Yeah.
right? And so like discomfort. How do they deal with change? How do they deal with uncertainty? How do they deal in pressure? I mean, my definition, are you curious?
Mm-hmm.
Are you coachable? Do you have a bias to action, a sense of urgency? Do you have command? And by the way, to have command means, like, I literally today, I said to a prospect, I said, look, I didn't say look, but we were, they felt that things were already in place, that we didn't need to do X. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
here, I understand that you feel that way. Here's what I
Right.
need you to understand. I will not take this project if we don't include this element of it. And
Right.
the reason is, if we don't do this, then I will not have the confidence that I'm going to be able to deliver what I'm promising you that I'm going to deliver. And so if you disagree with that, if you feel that it is unnecessary and to the point where, it's a total waste, right? If you don't want to do it, then I understand if you don't want to work with us.
Yeah.
Right. So when I'm interviewing a rep, especially, I want to know what are they telling me? It's really important. Teamwork here is really important. How do you work with others? Well, I find collaboration, right? So we kind of give those things away. I might go, teamwork. So let's say I've got a in the field hunter rep.
Yeah.
One of the things we really pride ourselves on, is teamwork. Tell me, what's your best working style?
Yeah.
What I want somebody to respond in this situation is, hey, look, I love teamwork, right? I love teamwork. I think, no one person gets it all done.
Right.
But just so you know, like, I'm at my best when someone tells me really clearly what I need to do, and then they kind of leave me alone to go do it. So like, don't get, like, I'll make sure that I keep you up to date, right? Okay, great. Because you just said something that on the surface would cause somebody to be concerned that I wouldn't, right? So that's command.
Right.
And the ability to be uncomfortable. You give me those attributes. So what did I say? I said, are you coachable? Are you curious? Are you coachable?
Coachable. Ability to be
bias
uncomfortable.
Action, sense of urgency, command,
Mm-hmm.
and comfortable on. So we can stick with the C's. You give me those 5 attributes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what the truth is? If you give me someone with those 5 attributes, they will be successful at whatever they dedicate themselves to. I guess the other thing is, how comfortable are you initiating in absolute ambiguity, either cold or absolute ambiguity?
Yeah.
So, like, my brother, everything about him, he would be, he wouldn't meet he wouldn't look like a sales rep. Like, he wouldn't, he would be a very, very good rep. He is, that he would not do well in a pure sales role if he were, unless he was in a role where it was handed off, already set up for him to come in. And
I see.
It's not that he can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even that the reluctance, the call reluctance would be debilitating to him.
Yep.
It's more that it just would be something that he doesn't want to do so much, that there would be other things that he does. So that's, and the other, and this is to me, this is being uncomfortable and and having command with bias to action. There's a bizarre thing about how do you talk about money?
Yeah.
How do you talk about money?
Yeah.
You know, I've seen people that are really, really good. They meet everything. They just can't talk about money. Like the moment the dollars come up, they just get
Nervous.
and you know, I mean, I mean, we've been so socialized so crazily about that. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. So that's a yes, that's what I'm looking for. And then other than that, everyone's got a different path. It's like, what do you look for in a hitter? I look for hand speed. I look for right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways to get the job done.
Yeah. Cool. How much does experience factor? Like, do you care if they've got a lot of experience? Would you prefer somebody who's greener so they don't have bad habits, right? So it's just situational as well.
So I think that, you know, so let's say I'm hiring an SDR and they're going to make 50 calls a day. I want to know, where have you made 50 calls a day?
Okay.
Because if you've never made 50 calls a day, then now if I'm hiring my 15th, certainly my 50th, I'm certainly less concerned about that experience. It's built into my mishire rate.
Right.
But until you've made 50 calls a day, you can't tell me how you're going to be making 50 calls a day. One of the best pieces of hiring advice I've ever heard was never ask somebody new to you to do something that's new to them.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So experience to me is more about knowledge. So there's an experience when we hire a sales rep, especially an account executive, there's a level of experience that they're going to need, but it's not that you've got 5 years, 10 years, 15 years experience. Actually, one of the reasons that the hire is going to be so difficult for us is that the level of experience that we need to be able to have the type of conversation we want this person to have. So like where we have too much demand, where we need somebody to step in and have that, they need to be able to have a real conversation. They need to have some depth. It's right. The danger is it's like, if they're in sales, then they've either learned a whole lot of, like, they're not going to lie to. So it's an interesting element that's there. But if I'm hiring a new rep, you know, if I'm hiring, you know, in a new role, you know, towards new roles, if we're a smaller team and we're still figuring it out, then yeah, I think experience does matter. You know, to the extent of, they say past performance is no guarantee of future results. And that's correct. It's not a guarantee of future results, but it's a pretty damn good indicator.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. All right, I got a couple of takeaways. So your economic model should be the driver of the decision whether to hire a salesperson or when to hire a salesperson. You should always be recruiting,
Can I
which
adjust,
I think.
can I
Yeah.
adjust something slightly?
Sure.
Because the question, when do you know you need to hire? How do you know you need to hire a salesperson? How do you know when you need to hire a salesperson?
Yeah.
Okay, we got the how and when. We got two questions in one. That's the way people think about the question, and the difficulty with the question is the fallacy is built into the question. The mistake is built into the question.
Yeah.
Because it views hiring a salesperson as an event.
Okay.
Right. And so what I'm saying is that we plan on hiring X number of salespeople this year at this point, and this point, because of this.
Right.
That plan will adjust if these come in ahead of plan, then we'll have to, you know, forward that hiring. If this comes, so really, every hire theoretically should be trigger based.
Right.
But sales, especially, and again, when we're talking about more than 25, 50 salespeople,
Yep.
especially, needs to be trigger based.
Yep. Always be recruiting. Understand your ramp up time when you're hiring a salesperson. Make sure your processes are clear, and then and I always like this. The best sales interview would be to play a round of Texas Hold'em.
Yeah. What was your second one? I had a thought, and then
always be recruiting.
And what was the third?
Understand your ramp up time.
Oh yeah, there we go. Know your math. If you want to hire and or lead sales, you need to know math. And it's so funny because there's no other, maybe finance, but everyone talks about, you know, sales is a numbers game. and everyone puts their little funnels and waterfalls together, but they don't know math. They don't understand. They don't understand the math. But what does average mean? What is all those different things? If you don't understand the math of your business, then understand you'll never have predictability, right? If you don't understand the math of your business, and that's what the math of your business.
Yeah.
And you'll never really be able to hire or manage sales with a systems and design mindset.
So that's an interesting point, because it's probably the thing that surprised me most coming into the sales ops role here, that I don't think I realized how much math was going to be involved in what we did and in sales and putting processes together and sales plans together. Like I didn't realize that.
And the problem too, now that I'm saying this, what I realize is too many people think math equals arithmetic, right? Arithmetic is certainly part of math.
Yeah.
No question about it. But math is more than arithmetic. And again, that's why Texas Hold'em comes in. If you don't understand probability, you're never going to manage your sales team well. You're never going to assess quality if you don't understand probability. And let me tell you, probability is a bitch to understand. It is so hard to understand.
Yep. And on that note,
Jess,
thanks, Doug.
Drive safe. You're
Thanks.
driving, right? You're not Lyft. You're not using Lyft. You're just.
I'm not using Lyft. I'm not taking the shuttle. I'm driving.
Drive safe.
Thanks. Until next time.
Until next time.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. I know there's a tendency in school to joke around whether or not you're actually going to use the math you learned, and while it may not be arithmetic that you need for sales, probabilities are a must. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us. Leave us a review and share the episode. If you have any questions you would like to ask Doug or Jess about hiring salespeople or being hired, email me at hannah@liftenablement.com or hit us up on Twitter @demandcreator. Until next time, remember, you can't solve your upstream problems downstream.